All right, it's fiscal focus time brought to you by InfoChoice, your choice of information on Australian consumer finance. Now, many of us dream of having financial freedom, the ability to live a comfortable lifestyle free of arduous work demands and severe cost constraints. It's where one can work for the joy of it rather than the necessity of it. And of course, be free to take time to travel and pursue other interests whenever you feel like it. It sounds blissful, but is it attainable? Well, one person who thinks so is financial educator Natasha Enchman, known as on TikTok as Tash Invests, who at 26 has already built a financial personal wealth of over $500,000. Tash has co-authored a new book called How to Not Work Forever, which outlines a simple and effective strategy on attaining real financial freedom through investing in shares and ETFs. G'day, Tash. Welcome to the Savings Tip Jar.
Thank you so much for having me. That was a very lovely intro. How nice.
Oh, thank you. I worked hard on that.
There we go. Yeah, Dom always tires away at them every week. But yeah, we're really excited for this one. Just before getting into what the book is about, what Dom said before with the 500K, personal finance, net worth, I suppose you could call it. Sounds pretty good. A lot of people are probably envious of your position. But I know with a lot of things in life, the hardest part is starting, especially with investing. People put in the too hard basket. But how do you actually start? Is it just a matter of starting? And how do people get around the mental block of starting to invest?
Yeah, well, first it's figuring out what you want to invest for and why. Like, do you want to invest for something that's a year away or something that's 10 years away or something that's like a lifetime away? Like, that's a good place to start because that will determine what you actually invest in, whether it's a savings account, whether it's shares, whether it's property. And when people say investing, usually they are referring to just shares. So if you're thinking about shares and you just want to start, like figure out how much you want to invest, how often, and then just go and find a platform that suits you. There's micro investing platforms where you can start with $5 a week. There's other brokers where you have to put in maybe at least $500. But I think the key to starting is like literally just finding a platform, putting in $5 and being like, okay, cool, I'm an investor now and I'm actually going to act like an investor now.
I guess, Tash, maybe some young people are quite hesitant to invest because it seems like such a complicated thing and seems like something that only millionaires do. And particularly, I think those thoughts seem to occur, particularly among women. We've done a survey quite recently which revealed that men were much more likely than women to have investments. And whenever I ask, female friends, and why don't you guys invest? And I just don't know how to do that, and it sounds complicated, it sounds risky, I might lose my money. Some people equate it with gambling as well. So I guess my question to you is, what are some common myths about investing that can be debunked?
Yeah, definitely that it is gambling. Like there's a huge difference between putting money on red or black versus actually investing in a real life business that has employees and is producing an income. Like they're not the same thing. There are investments that can be seen more like gambling when you buy a random meme coin or crypto or something like that. Like that can be more of a gamble. But if you're buying a business that's been around forever, like you're not really gambling at all. Like you're buying a business. I definitely hear the ones like it's too hard. It's made to seem really hard because some people want you to use a financial advisor or buy a really fancy investment that charges you high fees, but it's not actually that hard once you get started. I see ones like, I'm not good at maths. Like, you don't really need to be good at maths. We all have calculators these days. It's easy enough. It's all automated. I'm not smart enough. Like, you don't really need to be that smart to invest. Like, it's pretty easy to these days. Or the one that you said as well, like, investing is for millionaires. Like, investing is how you become a millionaire. It's not for millionaires. It's the way to get there.
There we go. Some hot tips right there. Speaking of young people, right now the big elephant in the room is house prices, and people are feverishly saving up for a house deposit. In our latest survey, it was revealed that for Gen Z, that was the primary savings goal, and for millennials as well. But how can young people carve out time and money to invest, say, in shares when they're busy saving for a house? And also, leaving some money for fun things such as travel or the occasional meal out.
Yeah, well, you don't have to do both at the same time. Like if you just want to save for a house, that's completely fine as well. You don't have to try and invest at the same time. I think there's a benefit to investing in shares at the same time because can be hard to go from saving like $200 a week or whatever it is, and then all of a sudden having that spare money and deciding what to do with it. Like that's a big jump if you've never invested in shares before. So you can do both if you want, but you don't have to if you want to save for a house. What was the other part of your question? Sorry.
Just about saving money for fun things,
Oh, for travel.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I did this. It was a different time, I guess, before COVID, and I'm from Perth, so house prices are a bit cheaper. But I invested and bought an apartment and also traveled at the same time. I think it's just priorities, like realizing that you can't have everything all at once. Like if you want to travel, maybe you'll need to do it a little bit cheaper. Maybe you'll have to save a bit slower for your house deposit. I think it's just being really honest with yourself, how much disposable income you actually have and where you want that to go. Figure out ways to increase your income as well. Like I had a few years where I worked a ridiculous amount of overtime to be able to buy my property. Like that's not sustainable for the long term, but I knew it was really helpful in that time. So thinking about how can you increase your income? Where else can you save? And what sacrifices do you have to make to do everything? If you don't want to make sacrifices, maybe you can't travel at the same time, but it's really just weighing up what you want to do yourself.
I guess, Natasha, financial freedom means different things to different people. Some people might interpret it as, well, if I win like the $500 million jackpot, then I'll have endless money to spend on mansions and Ferraris and fancy trips abroad. But, I mean, how much do you think realistically the average Australian needs to have financial freedom? Or if it's easier to answer, what's your idea of financial freedom?
Yeah, the stats around lotto winners are quite interesting because most of them end up going broke because they never actually learned how to manage their money. So it's definitely not the hack the way out. Financial freedom to me is more around like the flexibility and the freedom and the choice to just do what I want to do. Like I don't want to have to work a job that I hate just because I need it to survive. Like I like being able to say no to things that don't align, especially now being online, I get a lot of sponsorship opportunities. So I enjoy having the income to actually be able to say no to things that aren't going to benefit people who follow me. I never want to like have to stay anywhere that I don't want to either. Like I've been really lucky to move around a lot because I've had the freedom to do so. How much you need though really depends on you. Like I like to think of it, if you have $1 million invested, you can live off around like $30,000 to $40,000 a year in dividends. And that's not heaps to live off, but that's a pretty nice pay rise if you're stuck in a job that kind of has a ceiling of income. Like that's pretty solid. And to get there, like you can invest $100 a week. And if you get an average of 7% a year in returns, which is a lot lower than the average of the stock market, then you'll end up with $1 million in 40 years. And some people say that's ages away, like you can invest more to get there sooner. But like imagine just having a 30, 40 grand a year pay rise in 40 years. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, when you put it like that, it does sound simple. I don't know why more people don't start. Like I guess with the sort of advent of micro investing and platforms such as yourself, it has been a bit easier for a few people. But speaking of yourself and kind of, stuck in jobs that have like an income ceiling, I guess we'll speak about your former job as an occupational therapist for a bit. What did you kind of do, or what was the kind of like mental tweak that you needed to have to pivot towards doing what you do now? And what's your sort of general advice for people who are maybe stuck in a job they're not in love with and want to pivot to something else that will be more fruitful for them so they don't have to work forever?
Yeah, I was a residential support worker before I was an OT, and I think that was such a hack to being able to save so much money because you can work overnight shifts, you get paid to sleep, and they cover all of your expenses while you're at work as well. So you can eat for free, you're not really using power or water at home. So I earned like 100 grand when I was 21, 22 by doing that job, which is amazing at that age. Becoming an OT is a bit harder in terms of income because you can't just work unlimited hours. You do need to work like 9 till 5. There's less overtime opportunities. And I realized that pretty early on that I'd have to do more if I wanted to succeed financially. So for people who love their job, you don't need to go and quit. You can just invest some of your income and grow your like passive income on the side of that. I never wanted to do online stuff like I'm doing now. I kind of just started sharing my journey and then it happened. And it's been really exciting and awesome. But it's definitely been a big switch jumping from an occupation where you're like helping people directly to being more online and not seeing the individual impacts of people. So that's been
Mm.
challenging. And it's also been hard going from being employed to now I've set up my own company now and I'm self-employed. And that was a big mindset shift as well. Like I used to be really frugal and I found it really hard to spend money on business things like podcast studios or flights to go interview people or like all of these opportunities that pop up cost money. And that's been hard to be like, this is a business investment and like something I need to spend money on because you can't just like save everything all the time.
Mm.
Obviously, investing, particularly at the start, isn't going to be paying you a whole lot of money, and primarily your main source of income will be, your job. So I guess one of the important things if you to get yourself on that that wealth journey to financial freedom is to actually manage to secure a high paying wage. I believe you have some good tips for how to paid what you're worth, and when it comes to negotiating your wage.
Yeah, it can definitely be tricky and it depends on your industry. Definitely just asking. Like there's kind of a myth that you can't negotiate in healthcare roles, I found with a lot of people I worked with. But you often can. Like I definitely negotiated my first job out of uni and they paid me a bit more. Keeping track of what you have been achieving at your role, what you're doing to go above and beyond, just like learning to have those conversations as well. And most of the stats say that like by changing jobs, you're likely to get paid more than getting a pay rise at your current job. And that's not the best for all career moves, but considering like, can you move jobs? How can you upskill? All that kind of stuff as well. For more healthcare roles, I know that's a lot harder for people. Can you move rurally to get a pay rise? Can you do some kind of like shorter term locum contract to get a pay rise? All of those are options as well.
For sure. And there's all these kind of hot buzzwords at the moment, such as like lying flat and quiet quitting. And you said, it's not possible to have everything at once. But what about those people who kind of just want to do a job? It's like a means to an end, but still kind of want to get ahead. Like, what can they do? Because for a lot of people, they don't want to have to do like to find that edge, to either have, the luck of parental support to give you some cash to fund a business, or to work yourself to the bone. Like what about those people who just want to earn a regular income, and want to try and get ahead?
Yeah, I guess when you say get ahead, you kind of have to do something to get ahead. If you just want to not work extra, not work overtime, just make sure that you are spending less and investing something, like however much that is, making those sacrifices to put something away. I think there's a lot of benefit to having a year or two or a few years where you do have that really concentrated effort to get ahead. Like obviously to get ahead, you have to do something that other people aren't doing to get forward past them, whether that is like having a second job for a year and knowing that everything from that second job will go towards your goal. It is like taking on that overtime, whether it is like starting a side hustle temporarily. But I think either it's you need to cut down so you can invest and get ahead that way, because that's something that not everyone is doing, or you just decide to have a second income for a year or two or whatever it is to get ahead.
And Tash, what about superannuation? We have to. We're basically forced by the government for a portion of our money to go aside into super, but obviously you're allowed to put extra into your super, and you get a concessional discount from doing so. Is that something younger people in their 20s and 30s, is that something they should be considering, or is that something they probably shouldn't be worried about? They should be more investing in something that they can access whenever they want, rather than until they're past age 60.
Yeah, you kind of summarized it then. It depends on when you want to access it. I am trying really hard to get excited about super, but it is really boring and hard to be excited about something that is so far away and not accessible, and the rules can change as well. Obviously, there's huge tax benefits to investing inside your super. Like you can invest up to $30,000 this financial year and claim that tax benefit, which is amazing. And even like non-concessional contributions, there's still benefits there too. But yeah, it is hard to get excited about it. So it really depends whether you're wanting to like optimize your contributions the most and you love the Excel answer, or whether you need to invest outside of super to get excited about it. If you want your money in 10 years, super is not a good idea because that's far away from you if you're 20 or 30. But if you just want to do it for retirement, then sure, put it in your super. I think you can balance both, like maybe put in $10 or something extra into your super a week or a fortnight or whatever, and that will still help you a lot. But it's also whatever you're excited about. Like if you think about super and you're just like, ugh, I don't want to do that, then like don't.
For sure. And I'll ask a bit of like a double barrel sort of question. So, when you spoke to our sister podcast, Penny for Your Thoughts, you said, in 2023 that you no longer post your money diary due to like the comments on them. People were quite, narky about it. That, like the tall poppy syndrome is pervasive in
Oh,
Australia.
so interesting. Because I want to do this
Um,
again.
yeah, so like I listened to our sister podcast and I thought I'd ask a few follow-up questions, 60-minute style. But yeah, so like on that, do you think that Australians are becoming more open about talking about money? You're sort of at the coalface, right? Because you're doing it, in real time. And on that, do you reckon that we need to go a bit further to be more open about our money journeys?
Yeah, interesting. Because I did start posting my net worth again this year. So interesting to reflect on what I said last year. The hate did get a lot, and I was like, I'm not doing it anymore. But then I've kind of reflected on it. And I think it is helpful to still share and encourage other people to share as well. Sometimes I feel like we're getting better with being more open in like what I encounter in my personal life, but I know I also live in a bit of an echo chamber with other business owners and other people who are happy to talk about money. And also, if you've been my friend for the last 10 years, you've probably been forced to speak about it anyway. But then sometimes when something goes viral online, there is still all of those negative comments that aren't great. I think it's almost gotten worse because of the cost of living crisis. Like people are finding it really hard at the moment and it's tough for a lot of people. So it's extra challenging to see someone doing well. I don't know how we fix that until we like normalize it a bit more. It's definitely very gendered, which is unfortunate to see. But yeah, it is a very challenging space because I think there's a lot of benefits to being transparent and encouraging other people to think about their money. But at the same time, I don't want to upset people who are doing it hard at the moment. So it's a hard one.
Now we'll talk a bit more about the book that you've actually got coming out. So How to Not Work Forever. If you could hold it up to the camera
yes,
again.
sorry.
Oh, there it is. Yes.
Yay.
So yeah, just tell us a bit about what inspired you to produce this book, and obviously you co-wrote it with Anna Krasina, who we've actually had on the podcast sometime last year to talk about one of her other books, Kids Ain't Free.
Kids ain't cheap. No, not quite.
Kids
yeah.
Ain't Cheap. Sorry. Almost there. I should know that because I got the book myself because I've got a kid now.
Oh, nice.
So tell us a bit about what inspired you to write the book and how it was working with Anna on it.
Yeah, when I first started learning how to invest, there wasn't really much Australian information around. It was lots of like Roth IRAs in the US, and I was like, what is this thing we need to do? And then once I started exploring more and more people in Australia were talking about it, it wasn't very specific. Like everyone says, buy an index fund, but you're like, but which one? And like, what is an index fund and which ETF do I buy and which broker do I use? So I wanted a very practical guide that actually, of course, goes over the earlier things like saving an emergency fund, paying off debt, increasing your income and stuff like that, but then actually taught you how to invest and gave you actual ideas of ETFs and portfolios that you can use. So we worked with financial advisors to create those portfolios as well. And also like we aren't all or nothing people, like we still enjoy our lives, we still travel, we still do things as well. And I find there's a lot of black and white thinking in finance. It's either you're really frugal or you spend all your money, and it's hard for people to live in that middle ground. So it considers like living the life you want while also giving you a practical guide to investing in Australia. Working on it was good because we have different perspectives. Like I am 26 now, I don't have kids. She is, I think she's just turned 40, which is exciting, and she's got 2 kids. So we have very different perspectives. And I think it's good for people to see it coming from 2 different age groups and 2 different situations. She also works full-time still, whereas I work for myself. So having that difference as well is good as well. Yeah, it's good, I hope.
There we go. Tash Invest. Put you on the hot seat there for a bit with a couple of interesting questions. Maybe next time if you come on again, we'll have to eat some hot wings or something to really spice it up.
Yes.
But the book How to Not Work Forever, very interesting title. I certainly don't want to work forever is out now. And listeners, keep an eye out for it at bookshops everywhere. Tash Invest, thanks so much for appearing on the Savings Tip Jar podcast.
Thanks so much for having me.
Thanks, Tash.